to you from the Missouri City County Management Association Conference at the Lake of the Ozarks. This is GovLove, a podcast about local government. I'm Lauren Palmer, the co-founder of EverStrive Solutions and your host for this episode. GovLove is produced by ELGL, the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network. This week, GovLove is on site at the MCMA Spring Conference. MCMA is the professional association of appointed local government administrators in cities and counties in Missouri. My guest for today's episode is the one and only Kim Nakahodo, the Deputy City Manager for the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, and one of the most engaging and inspiring people I have met in the biz, so get ready for a fun conversation. Kim, welcome to GovLove.
Well, thank you very much. So much for having me. I would like to say I want to manage everyone's expectations, and I'm hoping just to do well.
Kim's underselling it. We're going to have a great time, and she's got a lot of insights that I can't wait to hear and share with our GovLove audience. But of course, Kim is also a GovLove listener, so she knows we're going to start this off with our lightning round to get to know her a little bit better. So, Kim, to start, what is something that you have always wanted to learn but haven't gotten around to yet?
This is an awesome question. So actually, I put a little thought into what it was, and I am an avid hiker. I'm a scouter. I love trying to get out into nature and get off the beaten path, as it were. So it's really the old school way of a compass, a map, and a ruler. I have done a lot of hiking with marked paths, but I have never done where they kind of drop you off in the middle of nowhere and just give you a compass, a map, and a ruler, and you have to find your way to a spot. So that is something that I have never had the chance to actually learn how to do.
And that's something you're interested in.
Absolutely.
Like survival guide.
And I'm not brave enough to say, just drop me off in the middle of nowhere and let me figure it out with no internet.
I'm grown completely dependent on the robots. Like, if I did not have my phone, I couldn't get down the street and back, Kim. Like, right? Are you one of these people who's like totally dependent on the GPS?
I have tried not to, but I find myself relying more and more on it. Same thing where, my kids are driving now, and I'm like, I used to have to go, you turn left at the Wendy's, you turn right on whatever, and they don't know how to get anywhere without their GPS. So I feel like perhaps I'm not doing a very good parenting job, because if that GPS system went down, I'm not sure they'd be able to find their way home.
Oh, I feel you so much. We have a 14, almost 15-year-old who is wanting us to teach him to drive. And the other day we were asking him, like, okay, give me instructions. How would you get from our house to your high school? And he had no idea. So I'm like, we got to teach these kids, like, navigation. What if they don't have their devices with them?
No, we are. We're like, you see those little signs with names on them? We spend a lot of money, so you know what street name that is.
Correct. And, north and south, east and west, these are things you got to get figured out. So I love it. I hope you have time in the near future to learn those skills and then teach me.
Me too.
Okay, awesome. Next question for you. What is something you are reading, watching, or listening to that you want to share with our audience?
So I'm currently reading, or having read to me, Cast, which is by Isabel Wilkerson.
I just finished this book, Kim. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it.
Yes. No way. So I'm halfway through.
Okay.
I'm halfway through. And it's fascinating, right? It's
fascinating, yes.
It is, for those listening who may not have heard of the book, it is about the invisible caste system here in America, about how we kind of got here, how power dynamics work, and I have been learning a lot. It's one of those invisible systems that surrounds us. We may not even be conscious it's in play. And this book kind of helps guide the reader through how these systems came to be, what they are doing, and possibly what you could do about them.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. I highly recommend. It's interesting. She kind of makes a comparison to our caste system in the United States to the caste system in India, and then Nazi Germany and the caste system there, which is, it's very easy for us to dismiss the Holocaust as a horrible thing that happened that could never happen again. And then you read this book and you're like, whoa, like these things are institutional and we gotta pay attention.
and they're invisible and unconscious.
Yep.
So one of the hopes of the book is to bring it to our conscious levels so that we can be aware of these systems. So far I've loved it. Like I said, I'm only about halfway through.
Okay, I can't wait to hear when you finish it and what you think. All right, and then a fun question for you. We are spending a few days in beautiful mid-Missouri at Lake of the Ozarks. What's a favorite Missouri activity or tourism destination that you'd like to recommend to our listeners who maybe haven't made it to the Show Me State yet?
So not sure how many cyclist fans the podcast has, but I love cycling, and the Katy Trail is kind of the end-all, be-all for anybody visiting Missouri that loves to bike hike. So there are several different places. If you have a bike that has the ability to have camping equipment attached to it, or you can just Airbnb it along the way. I do know a lot of cyclists that kind of do that as well. It's beautiful. It's very peaceful. You will find a lot of friendly people along the path. I really enjoy bike hiking, and I have another trip planned. We try to do it about once a year. So anywhere between 50 to 150 miles on the path. It kind of depends on our schedules, but it is super fun, and it's really an inexpensive trip to do after you as long as you have a bike.
Yeah, incredible. Great recommendation. And I think within the last few years, they've closed the last gap, like around Pleasant Hill. So now you can go all the way from Kansas City, Missouri to St. Charles over in the St. Louis area if we've got some serious cyclists on GovLove who are thinking about a big trip.
And the beautiful thing, because it is an old rail spur, you don't even have to be that big of a athletic cyclist.
Yeah, it's flat.
It's very flat.
Yes. Believe me, the few times that I have been on it, I'm a very novice cyclist, and I've appreciated that. Like, I can do this. This is a nice,
very
easy.
Approachable.
Yeah, very approachable. All right, great recommendation. Thank you. Now let's get into the heart of our interview. I always like to start by asking guests, tell me about your career path. How did you get into your current role in North Kansas City?
I always joke that I'm not supposed to be here. I always say that when I'm in a room, I'm like, I'm the least probably qualified. If not, I'm always surprised I'm in this room. And a lot of that has to do with I have a very unique background. My path to public service, I always say I fell backwards. I wasn't really on target to go there. I just kind of bobbled my way and found my heart in public service, and then started to kind of try to figure out where I was supposed to be. So I actually graduated from the Kansas City Art Institute. That was my undergrad, and I was full path for either Disney animator or Hallmark artist. That is why I went to the Kansas City Art Institute. They had official partnerships with those agencies at the time. So that was, if you wanted to become one of those two things, KCAI was where you went. So I graduated. I had realized that animation was not for me, which was a little bit of I'll be honest, that gave me personal pause, because that's what I wanted to be when I was in high school, was a Walt Disney animator. And then I went through like a boot camp and realized, oh my gosh, I don't like this, which I guess I'm glad I learned when I was in college. So
that's a scary moment.
When you realize, oh my goodness, I've been dreaming about the wrong thing for several years, and I've gone into substantial debt for the wrong thing.
Oh man, yep.
So, but then I pivoted to Hallmark. Kansas City is home to Hallmark, and I was like, great, I'm just going to get on with Hallmark cards. Hallmark used to hire kind of like a union bench at the time. So they would interview and put you on a list at about 50 to go. So they said it would take about 2 years once you made the list for a position to open for either retirements, attrition, people leaving the field. So they said, just go get some job somewhere, and when your name is up, we'll give you a call. So my getting some job somewhere was with the city of Kansas City. I had gotten a job in their finance department, doing communications, ironically, and I got on with the Kansas City Health Department. At the time, the Kansas City Health Department was trying to, we were piloting taking over the Women and Infant and Children, the WIC program. And we really thought that we could get people signed up in Kansas City at a higher rate than the state was able to, because we were closer to the people, and we knew through our data where a lot of the people who might be eligible but are not signed up yet live. We did a ton of outreach, and we signed up a lot more people in that particular program, and was able to take on that program from the state level through the health department. And through that, through being able to use my communication skills and actually seeing people sign up for services, we had chatted with one lady. She hadn't eaten in 2 days because she just didn't have the resources to do it. And I remember thinking, this is it, man.
Yeah.
To be able to use your talents and to be able to use what you've been trained to do and make a big difference in your local community. So when Hallmark called, I declined. And had my mom been able to squeeze through that phone, she probably would have killed me. That was something that my parents still struggled of why. Why in the world would you take down, take an opportunity and decline from Hallmark cards to work in local government? But for me,
this doesn't seem weird to me. This won't seem weird to GovLove. Like, of course, you can help people. You can make a difference. I love it. I'm sorry. Go on with your story.
Was, and so that was kind of a family joke for quite a while, how Kim bobbled her career path. But for me, I had found the GovBug glove. It had bitten me hard, and I really was like, this is wonderful. Instead of perhaps being a small part of a large organization, and maybe I make something, a card or something that makes an agency more profitable. It just didn't connect with who and what I was. But literally sitting at a table similar to what we're sitting in right now and signing up people who hadn't eaten for the opportunity to be able to nourish themselves and make sure that their baby got what it needed. That was it. I was sold. Yeah. So
awesome.
That's kind of how I got into local service. Again, it's very backwards. But as you know, Lauren, a lot of people don't even realize that there's a career path.
Totally.
That local public service, both local, state, county, whichever level of governance you happen to find your home in, that's an actual career path. Totally. I just find that we're terrible advocates for that.
I'd love to ask you more about that. Believe it or not, people who are regular listeners will know I've had more than a handful of GovLove guests who have some kind of background in art. And I find those people so fascinating. I think creatives are the unsung heroes of local government. I would love to know if you have any perspectives on how we get more artistic people to consider careers in local government.
So that's something that when I chat with a lot of students, I often will say, local government, we need the best and brightest and creative people, because some of the challenges that we face, right, are creative, complicated isms. And I do find a lot of artists do not see themselves in the public realm. They see themselves very much so, well, either I'm going to be a private artist and I'm going to do gallery or more traditional artists, or I'm going to go work for a firm that's large enough to have an art department, right? And what I don't think a lot of artists understand is you can be creative and artistic and still convey the public need and still meet the need of the day through approach, through being able to communicate it in a very different way that hits with people. I often joke that, sometimes it's not the content, but it's how it is displayed on a page that will make somebody actually interact with it in a better and higher light. But definitely creatives do not see themselves in the public realm. So often when I'm talking to people, I'm like, my undergrad is actually from the Kansas City Art Institute with a minor in art history and a minor in photography. And they kind of look at me and they're like, are you kidding?
Right. Did you get lost?
How did you get here? And I'm like, I'm the most surprised person here.
It all worked out. Okay, well, tell us the rest of your story. You were doing communications in the Kansas City Public Health Department, and now you're a deputy city manager. We missed a few steps in between.
Oh my goodness. Well, and I took the city administrator. City highway is always the budget office, right? I always joke that if you're wanting to get into city administration, the superhighway is the budget system. You'll find a few people that maybe take the police department. I've seen some police department people kind of take the highway and then kind of move over, merge, as it will, onto it. I've seen community development. You'll find that a lot in communities that are growing rapidly, that they kind of need that planning perspective. For me, it was actually through the budget office. I moved from finance to the city manager's office, city communications specifically, and then they needed somebody to help put together the budget and to make it aesthetically pleasing, as much as a document can be. So I actually worked in the budget office for 6 months, and then I'd slide back to city communications. So really understanding the budget is how you I find your way into city management. When you're working with elected officials, oftentimes they're asking, can we do this thing? Well, and there's a fiscal note usually attached. So understanding the revenues, understanding your strategic plan, how all these things snap together, even from an artist's perspective, that is kind of how I found my way through city management. I slung out to Blue Springs from a communications, again, doing communications for them, and then got promoted into an assistant 2 position. But a lot of that really was, how are we communicating our wants and needs to the community, getting feedback back, and how is that finding its way into the budget so that we have the resources to address their needs, wants, desires, or what they feel is either not happening or we're not communicating clearly enough that it is happening.
That's awesome. I'd love you to say more about how your background in communications has influenced your approach to city management.
Several of the things that I have learned is, and then I actually spent my senior year at the Art Institute studying perspectives. For 1 year solid, I went through, and I wouldn't say cosplayed, but I would say I walked in others' shoes to get an understanding from their perspective. How did and I mind not to sound too artsy on here, but I created an incident and an event, and then I tried to understand how different people saw and understood that event from their vantage point. That was my senior thesis.
Okay.
And what it was a girl visiting a circus, and she got separated from her parents. So at first, that circus experience was exciting and magical, and it quickly turned into very scary because the loss of her parental unit, the circus didn't change. Nothing at the circus level changed operationally, but her perception and understanding of the event dramatically changed because of one event. So I kind of went through, and it was a visual presentation, but I went through, an employee who had no idea this was going on. The girl herself, her parents who equally felt very terrified, the general visitors who had no idea that this event was going on. So that senior thesis helps me in communication is when you're building a park, right? So we're building a park, well, the adjacent neighbors have a perspective. From a fiscal standpoint, you have a perspective. The governing body members have a perspective, and the general residents have a perspective. But nothing about that park's construction changes.
Right.
Only the perspectives of the people who are either personally influenced by that park or have no clue it's even happening. So that senior thesis helps me from communication to quickly go through and understand, what do we need to communicate to the people who have zero idea that's even happening, to the, you're going to do what in my backyard?
Right.
So I find that style of perspective really helps frame and understand the communication, because again, nothing about that park is changing. Your everyday, the construction of it doesn't change whatsoever, but the people in your community experience that event very differently.
100%. That's a great way to describe it. Thank you. All right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We are just kicking off the MCMA conference. Kim and I are doing a GovLove podcast as our conference pregame. We have not attended any sessions yet, but what are you most looking forward to at this conference? Is there a session on the agenda that's particularly relevant to your work right now?
Oh, goodness. Every session, every one of these, I think that the board does a great job, the actual committee that puts this together. And there's like kind of a theme, whether that's conscious or unconscious. So a lot of this is, how are you taking care of yourself? What kind of professional development are you making sure you are giving yourself as well as your team members? as well as other items that are topical to our industry. So I'm looking forward to the life balance conversation, which I actually think is more life harmony. I have come to the realization that balance is, just like the title says, it's baloney. There is no such thing as balance. But I would say that there's harmony, that when you accept that maybe your family life needs to take precedent and your work slides to second, and sometimes your work actually slides to first, and maybe your other team members at home need to kind of understand that you're sliding things around, and that's just point in time issues, precedent, something happened, boom, out of nowhere you have to address. I would say also the homelessness as a housing problem is very relevant to our community. I think that every community is having kind of a discussion of affordable housing. What does that look like? Let's define that word. Nobody seems to be able to tell me what affordable means, or anybody what does affordable mean, as well as what is homelessness, and you have kind of maybe a mental picture of what that is, but also what are we not seeing? Who are borderline? Is there an ability or a program to help catch this problem more upstream?
Yep, great. Well, you mentioned the work of the MCMA board and planning these conferences. You're on the MCMA board of directors this year, and I know you've also been involved in ELGL. How has engagement with professional associations helped you in your career?
They, for me, have been everything. Because again, I fell backwards into my career path without really kind of any understanding, as well as nobody in my family. I've never had a personal knowledge of a city or county employee when I was a kid, or even through my collegiate experience. So professional organizations for me have helped me kind of find my people. ELGL specifically has helped me find my people, and to get to meet and interact with those who serve in a role in their community, and we come together and realize a lot of these problems are the same, and how in the world are we going to get the thing done? And to be able to reinvigorate the passion of why you do what you do. I was also very blessed. I did get my master's at the University of Kansas, go KU, rock chalk to all of you out there. But really, MCMA's scholarship program helped me with that. That was something that I had told myself, I can't go back into debt. I want to get my master's, but I'm going to have to think of this as a different way. I can't go back into debt. I now have a family. I'm much older in life. I spent, a lot of money on a degree that doesn't match what my day-to-day was, and I wanted to kind of be smarter if possible, and I was able to receive the Kathleen Mansfield Scholarship through MCMA, which really helped kick off my, getting my pursuit toward my master's degree. So those professional organizations, those scholarships, I would talk to anybody who has a professional organization. You sometimes have no idea how big that is to the recipient and how much you shape their life, even on a one-off scholarship. So thank you for having those.
Gosh, what an awesome shout out. And a good story, Kim, of an organization that invested in you earlier in your career, and now you're on the board and you're making contributions back to grow other talent that's coming through. Like, I love that full circle story.
It's absolutely why I was like, I have benefited significantly from MCNA, and now it's time for me to roll up my magic. Doesn't happen, right? These boards, they don't just magically appear, and these conferences happen, right? Somebody's got to roll up their sleeves and do the work so that everybody else can benefit. And really, for me, it was, okay, Kim, you've been a freeloader for a while. It's time for you to give back.
Totally. I love it. I hope that inspires some of our listeners to get more involved with ELGL. You also are a dedicated volunteer outside of local government. You mentioned at the top of our interview that you're a scout. Tell us more about that and the role that scouting plays in your life.
That was a program that when I was a kid, there were Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, and now Boy Scouts is Scouting America, and they let girls in there, which from my perspective is amazing. Our particular troop, we have a boys group and a girls troop, and I think the program works beautifully for all youth. what kind of calls me to it is this note of public service. It's citizenship. They do quite a bit of their programming in understanding citizens, not just your rights, but your duties, which calls to my public servant heart, right? I love the fact that volunteerism is a core part of it, as well as understanding that personal development, like you need to rely on your own skills. You're going to need these later in life, and we are building young leaders, and we expect you to step forward into those leadership roles through this program. Our job is to help prepare you. But really, in order to enjoy these rights and these benefits, somebody has to do the work. And we're looking to you, young people. Like I said, that's one of the things I love about it. I teach all 4 citizenship badges that are required for Eagle rank.
Impressive.
I do. Well, you know, I do enjoy a good government glaze on those children's eyes when I step through the constitutional, I step through not only the Constitution, but the preamble and all of the amendments individually.
Good. Give that all to them, Kim. If anyone can make them learn to love it, it's you.
No, I think that is, although one of the things that had an aha moment for me has been, we have a Citizens Academy for North Kansas City. And an aha moment really is, it's been a long time since most of us have gone through 3rd grade civics. Mm-hmm. And 3rd grade civics don't get into the why. They get into the what. You know, yes, there's a Constitution, Declaration of Independence. We had a Tea Party. All of these things most people can chat about. But the why and the how. I find that most adults don't really understand these processes. So when I'm teaching these citizenship badges to scouts, their parents are also in that room. So when we go over the why these systems exist and how we got there, I often find that it's not just the scout that you know is taking it because they have to. You're talking through that scout to the home life to understand. We start our Citizens Academy. It's literally, I teach them citizenship in the nation. It is quite literally that syllabus is your first day, and that's how in the world we got here.
Yeah, I love it. Is there any particular lesson that you've learned through scouting that you apply in your life in government?
I think a lot of it is making sure you're including that next generation. I find specifically in local government, in all levels of government, right, we get in this trap of we're making decisions for that next generation, but have we involved them? Mm-hmm. Have we talked to them at all? Do they understand that this decision we are making today, why we're making it, and then when they take over, here's how we got here so that they can be smarter than we are today. When we built, because we are in the process of building a new park, we were like, we want to have a meeting and we're not inviting the adults. We're putting in Playscape for kids. Like, we should be listening to the Playscape that they want to play with.
Of course. Not
the ones that we think they want to play with. And a lot of that's coming from specifically Parks and Rec, that the playground equipment is getting boring. Like, it's boring. They don't want to play with that. They wanted to play with these other things that is honestly a little bit more likened to what Lauren, you and I probably grew up playing on. You know, it's not quite as protected. It's a little bit more adventurous.
Safety. I played on some playground equipment back in the day. The safety factor was questionable, but this is fascinating, right? There's a balance with play and safety. Okay, go on.
Exactly, that they want to feel adventurous, that they want that element of, I wonder if I can do that thing and stick the landing.
Right.
Which could be terrifying as a parent. However, this is how you build confidence.
Totally.
And the scouting program talks about that. Yes, teach them how to start a fire. You may be very terrified to learn that they can start a fire.
Yeah, right.
But they need to learn that they can do hard things. Mm-hmm. build that confidence and understand that sometimes it doesn't always go the way you thought, and you have to be confident enough in yourself to pivot.
Totally, right? These are skills we have to have as adults.
Absolutely.
You gotta teach them when they're kiddos. Okay, that's great. I'm gonna ask you to revisit a sad and tough time in your career and in the history for your city. Back in 2022, the North Kansas City community suffered a devastating loss when police officer Daniel Vasquez was killed in the line of duty. Sadly, this is an experience that I think is relatable for some of our listeners, and that unfortunately everyone in management and local government needs to prepare for. So I'd love if you'd share a little bit about your story, Kim, and what you learned from that experience that you could convey to prepare other leaders.
You know, I reflect back on that day often, and actually here in the metro, Kansas City Metro, we just had another line of duty death with a paramedic. So although you can never really fully prepared, you also have to recognize it's in your probability that this could happen to you. Yeah. I would actually recommend FEMA does quite a bit of public information officer training, and even if that's not your hat to wear, you could have to wear that hat, because a lot of times line of duty deaths don't happen Monday through Friday during, working hours, and vacations and sick leave and all of these things where perhaps your trained public information officer is not at the ready, and you may need to step in. Now, for me, I am the public information officer for a municipality, but easily that could have been not. Those skills that you will learn there translate very well into no matter what position you are within an organization. Being able to clearly and wellly define a message and understand what to say and who should say it is, I think, a skill for anybody.
It's great advice.
I would also say lean on your network. Lean on your network. You will have an unbelievable amount of people immediately trying to reach out to you for a lot of different reasons. Some of them are obviously media agencies, but you also have family. You'll also have the neighbors on that block. When Danny was killed, he was killed in a neighborhood. It was in front of people's houses, and they were home. So we quickly partnered with now Beacon Mental Health to go door to door to those neighbors, because again, it's the perspective thing, right? It happened, and a lot of people interacted with that incident in a lot of different ways. So trying to understand and make sure we are taking care of ourselves first, my law enforcement community, my staff. Again, when you're a small agency like we are, it's not just some name on a roster, right? We're small. We all know one another. When Danny was shot and killed, everybody in my organization knew him as a human first, officer second. This was a coworker. So that was, trying to make sure we're taking care of our staff, making sure that we're taking care of the neighbors who didn't know that was going to happen outside of their driveway that morning. Nobody did. Don't be afraid to ask for help. One of the things that, and actually at the board level, we have talked for MCMA, we have talked about this is, do we have kind of a list of managers, community people who have had a line of duty death, so that when we hear about it from another sister brother organization in the state, we lean forward on, do you need help? We have been there. So don't be afraid to ask for help. You will need all of it. That's been our life lesson, is you will need every single bit of it.
Yeah, awesome. I'd love to give you an opportunity to just tell us something that you loved about your coworker, not just an officer, Officer Vasquez, so that we can continue to honor and celebrate his life of service and not just focus on the tragedy.
Absolutely. Danny became an officer when I was actually interim city administrator. So I remember his oath of office. I was there after it was taken. He was taken in a larger class. We had several officers take their oath that day. And I kind of went up, and on behalf of the city, we welcome you. Thank you for being part of our team. He had an amazing smile and he lit up the room. And I know that that's kind of corny, and maybe people say this, but Danny had an enormous laugh and a bright smile, and he loved the Hulk.
Okay.
So, he hit the ground running. He was so incredibly proud of becoming a police officer, and his family was so incredibly proud to be able to say, we have an officer in the family. One of the things that I forgot to leave off was that third branch of governance, the judicial system, due process takes a very long time. And after the charges had been brought up, one of the things that was told to us in the family was be prepared for a 10-year process. And that, especially when the hurt is so very fresh, to be told you need to prepare yourself, your coworkers, your team, the family for a 10-year process. Even though we had the person and files have been served. We're going through the court process right now. We haven't even had our first day in court yet.
Wow.
They are going through jury selection this fall. And you mentioned when it was happening, we're years later.
Yeah.
So that is something that I would say be prepared for that. It was not something that we were prepared to hear.
Yeah.
We were fortunate that they were able to find the suspect and bring charges. There are definitely communities where that person is not found or there is no justice to be had, right? So that was something that we learned kind of the hard way, as you only learn the hard way on these situations. But being able to kind of remember how bright and how much Danny's energy warmed the room, when we think about the long journey ahead of us, that is what also plays in our head this is important, and we have to make sure we see this all the way through because Danny deserves that.
Yeah. That's great. All right, I'm going to uplift the conversation a little bit now. I want to acknowledge that you've been recognized by ELGL as a top influencer in local government. Congratulations. This is a big deal, Kim.
Oh my goodness. I'm like, surely that's another... Are you sure it's not Kim Nakahodo?
I think what you meant to say is thank you for recognizing my excellence, ELGL.
I am flabbergasted and honored.
Do you remember when and how you found out that you were selected as an ELGL influencer?
It was a text from somebody.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I wasn't really... It was on my radar in the sense of, oh, they're doing that again. I wonder who will be selected. Oh, okay, I'll pop over and take a look with my, when I'm able to. And then I had a text, and I'm like, no, that is surely somebody having fun with me. And then I looked, I was like, oh my God, I feel like I've won the GovLove Olympics.
You have. So that's my next question. What did that recognition mean to you? That had to feel good when you got that text.
Oh my goodness. I was like, are you sure you just didn't have Kim and then a randomly misspelled last name? I'll be honest, seriously, I was just like completely honored and amazed and ecstatic.
So you're going to bear with me. I'm going to read some things that your nominator said about you. This person said, Kim uses her unconventional background to approach problems in the most creative ways possible. She is the most dedicated and humble person I have ever met. She has shown an incredible commitment to creating pipelines for future leaders and building up her colleagues in the KC Metro. Hear to that. And seriously, you would be insane not to include her. That is some high praise, Kim. Congratulations. Do you believe all that hype?
No, I feel like I owe somebody some money.
No. I think that's spot on about you. I love that they highlighted your creativity, kind of circling back to talking about your artistic roots. Can you give us an example of a problem that you've solved in local government with a particularly creative approach?
Oh, goodness. I'll go on one that has, we've recently, we're in year 3, maybe even 4 now of it. Engaging anybody in a budget exercise, right? Like, what is the most probably painful from an outsider who doesn't do budgeting process? Like, this does not sound like a fun event. Like, this is not where I'm bringing my kids. Like, we're going to go to a budget work session, children, and be excited about that.
That's more like you're grounded. We're going to the budget work session.
100%.
Yeah.
Or this is a class and you need it for graduation.
Yeah.
So here we go. So we came up with, and I do love a good pun. I mean, I am down with a good government pun.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this.
So we came up with an event called Bounce and Balance.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It is our budget. It's part of our budget process, and it's actually where we kind of quote unquote bring the budget to the people. However, we do it through games. So we have a bounce house, legitimately bounce house. And that we have found, if you have events for those kids to kind of experience budget in a play sense, you will bring the parents because they're interested in the free bounce house and some snacks. And then I hate to say it, we bring them in and then we trick them into enjoying government finance games. And we try to explain the budget priorities while we're there from a gaming standpoint. A lot of times people are always taken back when you're like, yes, a pumper truck. Yeah, that's like $1.2 million. And they're like, are you kidding me? So we bring out the pumper truck, the old one. This is what the current one looks like. I want you to touch and feel and look to see all the knobs and whistles on it. Here's what's happening with this one. Here's what we're proposing to purchase this year. Let me tell you why we need this thing and let your kids climb all over it. So we kind of talk through the budget priorities. We have a lot of games. We have a budget match game that we do. Fun. I mean, we also do your more traditional outreach style things where you get the jars and the pebbles and you have to do prioritization, right? Which nobody enjoys. But we do try to make it kind of a fun family style event as much as a government budget exercise can be. And we've had some success on that to be able to kind of go, if you keep doing things the same way you've always done them, you're going to have the same handful of residents show up at a very cold, you're at a table, you're gonna PowerPoint them to death, and then wonder why nobody wants to be engaged. So we have it at the park. We have it at Mackin Park, which is a beautiful large park in our community, and we get people who may not be residents of North Kansas City, and we're like all of the above, because everybody, in our minds, if we can educate any kind of fiscal understanding from a government standpoint to anybody, whether they're a resident of our specific little city or anybody else, we're all better if people understand where's the money coming from, where's the money going, and what do we hope to accomplish through the budget this year.
This is so great. I can't believe I have never heard of this before. Bounce and balance. I love it.
And again, we like a good pun because we have to balance.
It's so clever. Well, Kim, thank you. Those are all the questions I have for you. Is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap up?
Oh my goodness, no. I thank you, Lauren, for having me on. Thank you for this podcast. I always joke, like I'm sure everybody has said it, long-time listener, first-time caller. But it's podcasts like this that I love. I love hearing other people's ideas. And please feel free, if you've heard any of these, implement your own bounce and balance. We have had a lot of fun at the staff level putting them together. Thank you to everybody for all that you do. And please make sure that we are trying to grow the next generation of us, of a dedicated public servant heart workforce to take the reins when we're ready to let go of them.
Awesome message. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. Kim, one final question. If you could be the GovLove DJ, what song would you pick as our exit music for this episode?
Oh, my goodness. I would say Ready or Not by the Fijis.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good get it going jam. I love it. All right, well, that ends our episode for today. Thanks so much to our guest, Kim Nakahodo, and special thanks to the Missouri City County Management Association for its hospitality this week. Thank you for listening. You can reach us at elgl.org/govlove or on social media at GovLove Podcast. This has been GovLove, a podcast about local government.
Now that I escape, sleep, walk awake. Those who correlate know the world ain't cake. Jail bars ain't golden gates. Those who fake, they break. When they meet their 400-pound mate, if I could rule the world, everyone would have a gun. And together, of course, when get the up and on their horse.